Most days at the Maple Ridge Flea Market passed without anything worth remembering. People bartered over old tools, cracked vinyl records, and dusty boxes of books. But on this particular afternoon, something different stirred in the air. Officer Jack Monroe thought he was only there to pick up a set of used woodworking tools for his late father's shed. Yet, within minutes, he would stumble into a meeting that would change the course of not only his life, but the life of a weary, old veteran and a loyal German shepherd whose bond had been forged in silence, service, and survival. The market stretched wide across the cracked parking lot, its stalls patched together with faded tarps and weather-beaten tables. The autumn sun slipped lower behind the pines, painting the sky in shades of gold and copper. Wind moved through the rows like a restless spirit, rustling paper signs and sweeping brittle leaves across the asphalt. Jack, lean and weathered at 39, adjusted the collar of his Navy patrol jacket against the chill. He wasn't on duty, but even off the clock he carried the sharp presence of a man who noticed everything. The kind of presence that came from years of wearing a badge. His sandy brown hair was already dusted with silver at the temples, and his steady gray eyes carried the calm weight of someone who had lived through storms he rarely spoke of. But on this day, he wasn't thinking of storms. His focus had been simple: tools for the shed, a quiet evening, maybe coffee on the porch. Until just a few steps deeper into the market, he froze. There, beside a folding chair and a battered cardboard sign, stood a frail old man with a dog at his side. The sign, nearly ripped from its place by the wind, read in uneven letters, "Dog for sale. $8. Something about the scene tugged at Jack in a way he couldn't ignore. The man's name, Jack would soon learn, was Thomas Reed. He looked to be in his late 60s, though pain and hardship had carved lines that made him appear older. His green army jacket, once proud, now sagged loosely on his thin shoulders, its sleeves frayed at the ends. His cheeks were hollow, his lips tinged red from the cold, and his hands trembled, not only from age or weather, but from something deeper, something hidden and heavy. Beside him sat the dog, a German shepherd, broad and striking, even in stillness. His sable coat was streaked with silver, his left ear folded just slightly, twitching at every sound. A faint scar crossed one leg, a quiet reminder of battles past. Around his neck rested a faded bandana, clearly military issued, still kept, clean despite its years. His eyes, dark, steady, soulful, were the kind of eyes that carried the weight of loyalty and loss. Thomas caught Jack's glance and gave a faint nod. "Afternoon, officer." "Afternoon," Jack answered softly. His eyes flicked to the sign, then to the dog. Didn't expect to see someone selling a companion like him for $8. Thomas let out a weak chuckle that quickly collapsed into a rattling cough. He raised a handkerchief, and when it lowered again, faint red. Specks stained the cloth. He didn't hide it. Instead, his voice carried the blunt honesty of a man who no longer had time to pretend. "That's about all I've got left to ask for. Not because he's worthless, but because it's the last thing I know how to do." Jack's brows furrowed. "Mind if I ask what's going on?" Thomas eased into the folding chair, his bones stiff, his breath short. "Name's Thomas Reed. Served 32 years ago. Came back with more ghosts than medals. PTSD, they call it now. And cancer. Stage 4. Doctor says maybe a few months left." His eyes didn't stay on Jack. They drifted instead to the mountains in the distance, as though he could see memories. There. Rex. He's been my anchor. Saved me more times than I can count. My family, my brother, my reason. But I can't walk him anymore. Can't afford the meds. Some mornings, I don't even know if I'll still be breathing by nightfall. So I figured I'd better find him someone decent before time makes the choice for me." Jack swallowed, his throat tight. "And the $8? Thomas gave a weary smile. "Symbolic, so he knows he wasn't abandoned." He was chosen. At that moment, Elise Parker, the town's veterinarian, stepped out from a nearby stall. Petite but strong, with a sharp ponytail tucked under her beanie, and kind hazel eyes, she carried the warmth of someone who healed both people and animals without needing thanks. She wore a plaid shirt beneath a fleece vest, her hands still dusted with hay from earlier work. "I've treated Rex before," she said softly, her gaze warm but steady. "He's slower, sure, but strong, healthy. I'll make sure he stays. That way, free of charge, for as long as I can." Thomas's eyes softened. "She's been our angel," he murmured. Jack nodded gratefully, though his mind churned. He was a cop with long hours, unpredictable shifts, a life already demanding. Taking in a 10-year-old working dog, one grieving his handler, was not an easy choice. But then his gaze met Rex's, and in those steady brown eyes he didn't see hesitation. He saw loyalty, trust, and something waiting, as if the dog had already made his decision. A voice cut in from behind. "That's no golden retriever pup, Jack. That's a soldier's dog." Mia Lopez, Jack's partner, stood with arms folded, her short dark hair bristling in the wind. She was sharp, tough, but always honest. Big dogs like him, with a history, they don't just slip quietly into your life. Jack glanced at her, then back at Rex. "Good," he said. "I don't need quiet. I need honest." He stepped forward, pulled $8 bills from his wallet, and pressed them into Thomas's trembling hand. "I'm not buying a dog," Jack said firmly, voice low but certain. "I'm accepting a brother." Thomas's eyes filled with tears. His hands shook as he reached to untie the old bandana from Rex's collar. "He wore this during training," he whispered. Then from his coat he pulled a weathered pocket notebook. And this, his signal guide. Hand commands. He still remembers most. All the while, Rex hadn't moved. But when Thomas bent, whispered something into his ear, and gave a final scratch behind his folded ear, the dog exhaled softly and rose. He didn't run to Jack. Instead he turned back, sat down before Thomas, and stared upward, steady and still. Thomas's right hand trembled as he lifted it into a salute, weak but proud. Jack, moved by instinct and respect, straightened and returned the salute. And Rex, as though understanding the ritual, lifted his head, chest proud, posture tall, the stance of a soldier ready for his next mission. With reverence, Jack placed the faded bandana around Rex's neck. "Welcome home," as they turned. To leave, Elise gently touched Thomas's arm. "Need a ride, Tom?" He shook his head, a faint smile breaking through tears. "No, I'll sit a while. Just needed to know he'd be all right." Behind them, Rex paused and looked back, not out of reluctance, but respect, for the man who had been his world. The wind picked up through Maple Ridge, brushing leaves against the porch of Jack Monroe's small two-bedroom home. The scent of pine and wood smoke filled the evening as Rex stepped cautiously inside, his paws clicking softly on the floorboards of a house that smelled of old leather and quiet memories. Jack closed the door gently. The framed photos of military friends on the walls, the worn sofa, the folded flag in glass by the fireplace, all spoke of loss and loyalty. That night, when a distant ambulance siren pierced the quiet, Rex shot upright, ears tense, eyes wide. His chest heaved, pacing as though the battlefield still echoed in his ears. Jack sat with him, speaking softly. "You're safe, buddy. Just a sound now, nothing more." He breathed deeply, slow and steady, until Rex matched his rhythm and finally lay down again, resting close to the man who had called him family. By dawn, sunlight filled the kitchen with a warm golden glow. Jack stirred coffee, his eyes on Rex, who now slept peacefully by the hearth. After breakfast, Jack clipped on a simple leash, guiding him to the truck, their destination. Parker Veterinary Clinic, a small white building nestled between the pines. Outside stood Elise, sipping from a ceramic mug, dressed in green scrubs and a denim jacket with a German shepherd, stitched proudly over the logo. She smiled as they approached. "This is Rex," Jack said simply, keeping the leash loose. Rex stood calmly, posture proud but relaxed. Elise crouched, brushing her hand gently down his back. "You're a handsome old man," she murmured. "Let's get a look at you." Inside, Rex allowed himself to be weighed and examined. Elise ran her stethoscope gently along his chest, felt his limbs, and tapped gently along his joints. His hips are a little stiff, but not unexpected for hissage. Heart strong, reflexes quick, and judging by his gaze, his mind's still razor sharp. She turned to Jack, washing her hands. "Whoever trained him did it right. He's not just obedient, he's loyal." Jack handed her the small notebook Thomas had given him. Elise flipped through it briefly. "This handwriting," she said softly, recognizing the slant. "Thomas Reed. He brought strays to me, sometimes paid with soup cans or firewood, always apologizing for not having cash." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You knew him?" "Not well," Elise replied, her voice tightening. "But I remember one night a blizzard had shut down the back roads. A woman with her daughter had slid off the hill curve. Thomas pulled them out using a garden hose and a truck that shouldn't have been running. Didn't even wait for thanks, just nodded and left." As if summoned by memory, the clinic bell jingled. A girl of around 8 stood in the doorway holding a faded blue rubber toy shaped like a bone. Her freckled cheeks flushed from the cold, a blonde braid poking from beneath a wool beanie. This was Lily, the daughter of Elisa's next-door neighbor. She walked up shilly and held out the toy. "This was my aunt's dog's favorite. Maybe he'd like it." Rex sniffed it and wagged his tail slightly before gripping it gently in his jaws. "Guess that's a yes," Jack smiled. Lily beamed. "Mom says that man with the dog, the one who lived in the green trailer, he helped us once, said I should give back to his friend." Jack's gaze softened. "He'd like that," he said. Back home, Jack began the first day of training. Hess spread out an old military blanket on the floor and flipped open the notebook. The pages were detailed commands, hand signals, scent drills, even notes on how to calm Rex during thunderstorms. He began with the basics. "Sit, stay, lie down." Rex responded quickly, his movements precise. Jack advanced to recall and scent location exercises. He hid an old sock beneath a pile of couch cushions. Rex paused, sniffed, then turned away. But when Jack hid Thomas's bandana folded into a ball and placed inside a closed drawer, Rex's demeanor changed. He circled the room, paused at the drawer, then sat beside it. Paw gently lifted. Jack opened the drawer and held the bandana up, stunned. "You remember him, huh?" he whispered. "You're not just trained, you're tethered." That night, Rex lay by. The fire again. The toy Lily gave him resting beside his paws. The bandana folded under his chin like a relic. Jack sat nearby, watching as the dog's breathing slowed, his eyes half closed, but alert. This house was not yet home for Rex, but the thread of memory had begun to weave new roots. The fog of early autumn clung to Maple Ridge like an old wool blanket. Morning sunlight barely pierced the silver mist that curled between trees and rooftops. Jack. Monroe stood outside the sheriff's station, arms crossed, as Rex nosed a strip of fabric placed on the ground. The German shepherd's ears twitched, on still bent, his movements deliberate. 3 weeks of training had returned a surprising sharpness to his senses. Deputy Rachel Clark leaned on the fence, scribbling notes. "He's got it. That's the 3rd correct. Track today." Jack nodded, his gray eyes quietly proud. He's earned more than a second chance. That afternoon, Chief Norris announced Rex had officially passed the department's basic scent test, despite his age and injuries. Though too old for full-time duty, Rex would be listed as part of the Canine Reserve Unit, a backup tracker for search and rescue. Jack received the news with a silent pat to Rex's flank. The dog looked up, tail thumping once. Their first call came just 2 days later. Elderly male Harold Bishop, 84. Rachel briefed over the radio. Dementia. His daughter said he wandered into the woods behind the old water plant, last seen wearing a red knit cap. The woods bordering Maple Ridge weren't vast, but with temperatures dipping and twilight coming early, time was critical. Jack crouched beside Rex, holding out a wool scarf pulled from the missing man's porch. "Track, buddy," he whispered, giving the subtle two-finger signal. Rex sniffed, circled once, then moved. The trail wasn't straight. Harold's wandering mind had likely led him in loops, but Rex moved with purpose, tail slightly raised, steps steady. Jack followed close behind, radio clipped to his vest, boots crunching frost-covered leaves. They crossed a shallow stream. Rex paused at the edge, then stepped across, water dark against his paws. On the other side, his head lifted. A broken pine branch lay across the trail, snapped clean, fresh. Rex circled it, nose brushing low, then barked once. Jack stopped cold. "Got something?" A patch of red peeked from behind a fallen log, barely visible in the dim light. Jack approached carefully, hand resting near his holster. Harold Bishop sat hunched, knees pulled to his chest, eyes wide and glassy. His breath came fast, ragged. The old red cap was crooked and dirt streaked his cheeks. He didn't respond to Jack's voice. Rex, sensing something beyond scent, stepped forward. The old man flinched, murmuring something incoherent. But Rex didn't stop. He lay down beside Harold, body warm against the cold earth, head gently resting near the man's side. Slowly, Harold reached a trembling hand and grasped the thick fur at Rex's neck. He clung there, desperate, fragile as Rex stayed utterly still. Moments passed, the man's shoulders lowered. His breathing, at first shallow and panicked, began to fall into rhythm with Rex's calm, steady inhales. Jack quietly radioed. "We've got him alive, stable. Bring med support and a stretcher." By the time the rescue team arrived, Harold had fallen into a light sleep, still holding on to Rex like a lifeline. That evening, Maple Ridge buzzed with quiet celebration. The mayor called. The local paper asked for photos. The Bishop family brought cookies to the station. But for Jack, the moment that mattered most was the quiet one, when he and Rex returned to the cabin and sat on the back porch in silence. Elise Foster dropped by just after dusk. Her jeans were still streaked with hay from the clinic, and her brown ponytail was damp with fog. "I heard about the rescue," she said, setting a thermos of warm cider on the table. "Your boy did good." Jack smiled. "He's more than I expected." Every time Elise crouched in front of Rex, gently touching the scar on his hind leg. "I've been thinking," she said softly, "about his trauma. If you're open to it, there's a method I've used with combat dogs before. It's called safe confrontation therapy." Jack's brow lifted. "Sounds intense." "It's simple, really," Elise replied. "You play sounds that would normally trigger him. Sirens, alarms, gunfire, but in a completely calm and safe setting with treats with you beside him. It helps retrain his brain so the memories lose their sting." Jack looked at Rex, who blinked slowly, head resting on his paws. "We'll try it," he said. Before Elise left, she handed Jack Asmal's speaker and a flash drive. "Start with low volume," she advised. "Let him control the pace, and if you need backup, I'll come help." That night, Jack lit a single lantern and placed Rex's favorite blanket by the fireplace. He sat beside him, speaker ready, Elisa's instructions fresh in mind. A soft siren played. From the speaker, distant, harmless, more like an echo than a threat. Rex flinched, ear-sperked, but Jack placed a calm hand on his back, whispered his name, and offered a slice of cooked chicken. Rex took it, then curled in closer. In the quiet cabin, past and present touched, not with fear, but with understanding. The next morning, as frost glazed the windows, Jack found a flyer tucked under his door. It was from Pastor Graham, Theman with kind eyes and a slow voice who always brought his dog to the farmer's market. The flyer read, "PTSD Support Gathering. All welcome, two-legged or four." Jack held it for a while, then tucked it into his coat pocket. "Not yet," he murmured to Rex, "but maybe soon." The morning fog lingered low over Maple Ridge as Jack adjusted the leash on Rex and approached the old boarding house where Thomas once lived. The house was nothing more than a converted barn, its red paint faded to a weary rust, its porch sagging like an old man's shoulders. But Rex pulled slightly on the leash, his steps quickening as if he knew exactly where he was going. Jack unlocked the door with the key the county clerk had provided. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of pine-scented cleaning spray and old paper. Dust floated lazily in the shafts of morning light cutting through the blinds. The furnishings were sparse: an army cot, a scarred oak desk, a few chairs that had seen better decades. He knelt beside the small metal filing cabinet in the corner, rummaging through drawers filled with vaccination records, microchip forms, K9 training logs, all vital for officially registering Rex as part of the reserve K9 unit. Rex stood beside him, ears perked, tail still, but then his nose twitched. He turned to the old desk, sniffed around the bottom drawer, and pawed at it gently. The drawer's rail had come loose. Jack gave it a tug, and the whole thing slipped out, revealing a narrow space beneath the false bottom. Rex's nose nudged something buried beneath layers of old receipts and folded letters. It was a single envelope, dough-geared and yellowed with time. The handwriting on the front read, "To whoever. Will love Rex after me." Jack sat down slowly on the worn couch and opened the letter. "I don't know if I'll have the courage to send this, but if you're reading it, then I didn't make it home. Don't be sad for me. Rex has already saved my life more than once. I'm just sorry I couldn't repay him in full. He deserves more than a lonely cabin and an old man's slow decline. If he's found you, please let him keep serving. He was born to protect. Let him keep doing what he loves. That's all I ask, Thomas." Jack didn't realize he was holding his breath until he raked the end. Rex sat beside him now, his body pressed gently against Jack's leg, as if he too understood the weight of those words. Jack rubbed the fur between Rex's ears. "Looks like your old man knew your heart, huh?" That afternoon, Jack filed the official paperwork to have Rex fully reinstated, not just as a reserve, but as an active member of the county K9 unit. The clerk at the sheriff's office blinked in surprise. "You sure?" she asked. "He's older than most active dogs." Jack simply nodded. "He's got more heart than most men I know." That weekend, as the town prepared for its monthly safety awareness event, Mia Lopez stopped Jack in the station hallway. Mia was in her early 30s, Latina, petite but sharp-voiced, her dark hair always in a perfect braid, and her clipboard like a second limb. She was known around town as the non-nonsense school liaison officer, fiercely protective of her students and notoriously unimpressed by showboating. "I saw Rex at the Woods Rescue," she said, tapping her pen. "He's obedient, focused, got presence." Jack nodded wearily, unsure if she was building to a compliment or critique. "I'm organizing a road safety demo at the elementary school," she said. "Seatbelt drills, crosswalk basics. But I want something memorable to make the kids pay attention." "How? About a K9 guest instructor?" Jack blinked. "You want Rex to teach traffic safety?" Mia smirked. "Call it community bonding. Let the kids see a working dog in action. Make discipline look cool. You in?" And the next day, The school courtyard was buzzing with energy. Lily, in her signature yellow backpack and oversized pink hoodie, ran up to Rex and offered him a chew toy shaped like a stop sign. "For good luck," she whispered. Jack laughed and clipped on Rex's demo vest. "All right, buddy. Let's show them." The activity began with basic commands: sit, stay, heel. But it was the distraction drill that had the children silent with awe. Mia scattered small treats across the path and placed 3 traffic cones at the far, and only one had been scented beforehand. Jack gave a silent hand command. Rex trotted confidently, ignored every treat, and stopped. Right at the cone with the scent, placing a paw beside it like a proud professor grading a paper. Gasps and applause erupted. One of the boys whispered, "He's like a superhero." Later that afternoon, in the small school library, Lily sat beside a stack of old picture books. Jack found her reading the same letter he had discovered earlier, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I read it 10 times, she said softly. "I want to make a video of me reading it so Thomas can hear it wherever he is." Jack knelt beside her. "I think he'd like that." Lily's voice was small but sure. "Do you think he was scared?" Jack looked down at Rex, now resting peacefully beside the bookshelf. "Maybe, but I think he felt peace knowing Rex would find someone." And he did. Outside the window, Rex stirred in his sleep, ears twitching at the sound of a passing bell. Jack made a mental note to begin working with him on a new sound desensitization routine, pairing loud sirens with calming rewards, just as Elise had suggested during their last visit. Safe memory encounters, she had called it. Help him overwrite the trauma, with trust. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the streets of Maple Ridge glowed golden, Jack sat on his porch with a mug of coffee. Rex lay beside him, his breath deep and steady. "Let's keep going," Jack said softly. "Let's keep serving." Just like Thomas wanted, and in the hush of dusk, with the weight of a letter lifted and a new chapter opening, neither man nor dog felt alone. The scent of burnt grass lingered in the night air like a warning whispered too late. Jack stood near the river's edge, where the fire department had cordoned off a blackened patch of earth. The flames were out, but the smoke still clung to the air, in faint, acrid streaks. It had been a small fire, thankfully. No casualties, just a scar in the wild thicket bordering the creek behind Maple Trail. But something didn't sit right with him. Rex sat beside him, alert, but calm, his sable and silver coat glinting under the cruiser's headlights. At 10 years old, the German Shepherd had agudinto his prime, calculated, deliberate, and tonight, essential. Jack knelt beside him, holding up his open palm. "Seek," he whispered. Rex moved with purpose, nose low to the ground, tail stiff with focus. The air was thick with moisture from the nearby river, but there was something unnatural under it. Chemical, sharp. Within moments, Rex paused by a half-scorched patch of earth, sniffed again, then lowered himself into a sit. Jack walked over and saw what Rex had already found. Nestled between the blackened grass was a plastic jug, melted along one side. A faint trace of gasoline still clung to it, mixing with the damp earth. Jack slipped on gloves and picked it up carefully. "Accelerant," he muttered, glancing back toward the quiet trailhead. "And not an accident." He clicked on Rex's body cam to review the footage and flagged the recording. Rex, calm and sure, had clearly signaled at the exact spot. It would be enough to submit to the insurance investigators. A voice crackled over the radio. "Mia Lopez. Got something," she said. "Talked to a couple from the boat launch. They saw 3 kids earlier with bags and a lighter. Looked like they were playing, but got jumpy when they saw headlights." Jack exhaled through his nose. Mia had grown more cooperative over the last few weeks, her earlier skepticism toward Jack and Rex softening with each mission. She had an instinct for reading people brash with adults, surprisingly gentle with kids. By the time they regrouped, 3 teenagers were seated on a curb near the trailhead, arms crossed and eyes nervous. Jack didn't come down hard on them. He didn't need to. One glance at the melted jug and burned patch of grass was enough to send a ripple of fear through them. "We didn't mean for it to catch like that," the tallest boy mumbled. "We just thought it had burned fast and go out." "You're lucky the wind didn't shift," Jack said calmly. "If this spread to the brush, it would have been a full-blown forest fire." Behind him, Rex sat again, quiet but present, his mere presence a reminder of consequence. Back at the station, Jack filled out the incident report while uploading the footage from Rex's body cam. The confirmation of arson, thanks to Rex's precision, would help local authorities secure funding for fire reeks. Insurance would cover the repair of the damage. It was a victory, small but meaningful, but the moment of relief was short-lived. Jack's phone buzzed. Elise. Her voice was steadier than the news she brought. "Thomas was admitted again," she said gently. "Respiratory distress. They've moved him to the hospice wing. It's time, Jack." He didn't respond immediately. Just closed his eyes and leaned back in the chair, hand resting unconsciously on Rex's head. "He's lucid," Elise added. "But he's asking for someone." "Us?" "More specifically, Rex." That night, under the pale glow of the hospital corridor lights, Jack walked alongside Mako Graham. The pastor, a tall, soft-spoken man in his 60s with kind eyes and a voice like sanded oak, had been the one to suggest the visit. "Sometimes the most effective comfort comes with fur," Graham said with a faint smile. They entered the hospice room. Slowly. Thomas lay in bed, pale but alert. Oxygen tubes secured gently across his face. His chest rose and fell with effort. But when his gaze landed on Rex, something shifted. His eyes welled, then cleared with a strange crystalline brightness. Jack gave the silent cue. Rex patted forward and with almost reverent caution placed his head gently on Thomas's chest. The old man's trembling hand reached for the dog's neck and curled there, fingertips sinking into the thick fur like a drowning man grabbing hold of a lifeline. The heart monitor settled. The whirring machine stopped its anxious climbing. "Good boy," Thomas rasped, his voice like cracked ice under spring sun. "You always knew how to bring peace." Jack watched in silence. It wasn't the kind of peace morphine brought. It was deeper. It was memory and companionship, and the quiet understanding of a soul that had never needed words. Later, Elise pulled Jack aside while Thomas drifted into a calmer sleep. "His vitals were erratic before you arrived," she said, eyes red-rimmed but grateful. But once Rex lay down, everything slowed. Stabilized. Rex sat by Thomas's bedside for nearly an hour, only rising when the nurse gently dimmed the lights. As they exited the hospital, the stars stretched above the town like quiet witnesses. Jack paused by the cruiser, hand on the door, and looked down at Rex. "You did good today," he said softly. "Found the fire? Calm the storm." Rex blinked once, then leaned his weight into Jack's legacy way of saying, "I was just doing my job." The morning sun filtered weakly through the faded curtains of the small farmhouse, casting dull lines across the worn floorboards. Jack stood in the kitchen, mug in hand, waiting for the familiar sound of nails clicking against wood. But the silence stretched. He glanced toward the dog bed by the back door. Rex hadn't moved. The old German shepherd, now gray around the muzzle, and slower in step, lay curled tightly, facing the door as if expecting someone. His bowl, untouched from the night before, sat beside him. Jack knelt down. "Come on, buddy." "Not hungry?" he asked softly, scratching behind Rex's bent ear, but the dog only gave a low, hollow sigh and rested his head back on his paws. Worried, Jack called Elise. She arrived within the hour, hair still damp from the shower, face free of makeup. Dressed in a green windbreaker and jeans, she carried her worn vet bag like always. She knelt by Rex with the tenderness of someone who treated him not just as a patient, but his family. "He didn't eat at all?" she asked. Jack shook his head. "Didn't even sniff it." Elise checked his vitals, ran her fingers gently along his rib. Cage and joints peered into his eyes and checked his gums. No fever, no pain response, heart rate steady. "It's not physical, Jack." Her voice softened. "Sometimes they just know." Jack looked at her, confused. "Know what?" She paused, searching for the right words. "When someone they love is about to go." He fell silent. Elise gave Rex one last reassuring rub before standing. "Just keep him close today." "Okay?" Jack nodded, throat dry. As Elise packed up her bag, she glanced once more at Rex, still unmoving, still watching the door. That night, just past 10, the phone rang. Jack answered on instinct, heart already sinking. "Jack." Elisa's voice trembled slightly. "Thomas passed." In his sleep, he didn't respond at first, gripping the receiver tightly. On the other side of the room, Rex let out a soft whimper. Then, without prompt, the dog slowly got up and walked into the living room. Jack followed. Rex sniffed the air, then padded toward the wooden cabinet beside the fireplace. On top of it sat an old folded bandana Thomas's. Jack hadn't even realized it was there. The dog nudged it down with his snout, let it fall to the floor, then lay beside it, curling into the cloth like it was a piece of Thomas himself. His eyes never left the front door. Jack sank to his knees next to him, pressing a trembling hand against Rex's back. "I know, boy," he whispered. "Me too." He raked into his pocket and pulled out a wrinkled letter, one he and Thomas had written together but never sent. Words scribbled with hope, with apologies, with things that should have been said years ago. He laid it gently on top of the bandana. "Tomorrow," Jack whispered, voice cracking, "we'll go say goodbye." The next day dawned gray with clouds stretching low across the sky. In the modest classroom of the town's community center, Lily sat with a glue stick in hand and a pile of pressed dandelions. Her little fingers moved carefully across the folded cardstock as she finished a sympathy card. Her design was simple, but heartfelt. A white dog angel with wings surrounded by dandelions blowing in the wind. She glued the last piece in place, then looked up at her mother, who was packing a brown box with tissues and framed photos for the service. "Do you think Rex will be allowed to come?" Lily asked. Mia, dressed in uniform but with gentler eyes than usual, gave a slight smile. "I've already asked. Got special permission from the chief. Rex will be there. He earned it." At the same time, across town, Reverend Graham moved through the sanctuary of Cedar Grove Chapel. The elderly man with neatly combed silver hair and a dark gray suit stood before the altar holding a folded flag and an old photo of Thomas in uniform. "Salute of service," he whispered to himself, reviewing the ceremonial rites for veterans and, as he called them, warriors with 4 legs and a soul. In the back pew, Mia entered silently and handed him a printed program for the next day. He scanned it, then added one last line in his own handwriting. "In honor of K9 companions who serve not with weapons, but with unwavering hearts." That evening, back at home, Rex refused his dinner again. Jack didn't press him. Instead, he sat beside his companion, arm resting over the dog's back, and told stories into the quiet. Stories of their first patrol together, of Thomas bringing Rex home for the first time. He told them as much for Rex as for himself. Each memory a stepping stone across grief. Outside, wind rustled the autumn leaves. Inside, one man and one dog kept vigil beside a bandana and an unsent letter. They didn't need words. Only the silence of love, waiting to say goodbye. The sun rose slow and pale over Pine Brook, casting a gentle light across the town's small veteran cemetery. The air was still cool with the lingering mist of early autumn, and the world seemed to be holding its breath. Rows of folding chairs faced a casket draped in the American flag, surrounded by wild flowers, mostly white dandelions, carefully arranged by small hands. Nearby, a framed photo of Thomas sat on a pedestal, his eyes as steady and kind in the image as they'd been in life. Rex walked beside Jack without a leash, his steps unusually slow. The 10-year-old German shepherd wore his weathered green bandana, now neatly pressed. Though his gait held the stiffness of age, his eyes held something deeper grief, quiet and noble. As they approached the casket, Rex stopped. With deliberate grace, he placed his muzzle against the rim of an old army cap resting atop the casket. Then he sat perfectly still, body poised in the classic watch command. Not a sound, not a movement, just a loyal sentinel saying goodbye. Jack stood just behind him, dressed in full uniform, though his face betrayed the weight of sorrow. His storm, gray eyes locked on the folded letter in his hand, the one he never got to deliver, the one Thomas never got to read. He stepped forward and began to speak, voice low but steady. "I was going to give this to you next week. I thought we had more time." His hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the letter. "Dear Thomas, you once said life's biggest battles are fought in silence. I didn't understand that until Rex came into mine. You gave us both a second chance. You sat on that porch with us, winter wind and all, and just listened. You made this place feel like something more than survival. You made it feel like home. Thank you for believing in us when we barely believed in ourselves. You're more than a neighbor, you're family." Jack stopped, inhaled shakily, then added, "And I hope you knew that, even without the words." A hush fell over the mourners. Even the wind seemed to pause. From the first pew, Lily blinked through tears and tapped the tablet resting on her lap. The screen lit up, and a short video began to play through the speakers. A montage of photos, soft music underneath. Thomas handing Lily a fishing rod. Thomas holding out a dog treat to Rex. Thomas asleep in his chair. Rex curled at his feet. At the end, white letters faded in. "Thank you, Mr. Thomas." The crowd, neighbors, veterans, officers, and children, stood as Reverend Graham stepped up. His presence was warm but grounded, his silver hair clipped neat, his voice rich and calm like the old trees of Pine Brook. He held a folded flag in gloved hands and walked slowly toward Jack and Rex. "In service there is duty, but in love there is choice," he said. Thomas Reed chose to serve again long after. The uniform came off. "In the quiet ways that heal, not harm," Heck knelt, lowering the flag gently into Jack's hands. Then he removed a braided leather cord from his pocket. On it, Asmal's silver emblem, an etched canine paw beside a soldier's insignia. He leaned forward and looped it around Rex's neck. "Service never ends," Graham whispered more to Rex than to anyone else. Rex didn't blink. Off to the side, Mia stood quietly in dress blues, her red hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her expression was hard to read, part pride, part mourning, but she had worked hard behind the scenes to get Rex clearance to attend. She caught Jack's eye and gave him a brief nod. Near the back, a man stepped forward hesitantly. Mid-30s, wiry build, long sleeves pulled over, shaking hands. His name was Aiden Crossand, Afghanistan vet, rarely seen in town except on group support nights. "I just wanted to say something," he mumbled, then cleared his throat. "I saw Rex just last week curled up against Thomas's leg like he knew something. I didn't. I'd been thinking about quitting the support group, thought it was useless. But that image stuck in my head, a dog choosing to stay. That's when I signed up for therapy." People turned to look. Some blinked away tears. Jack nodded solemnly toward Aiden, silently thanking him. Later that afternoon, Elise hosted a small gathering in the back hall of the church. The room smelled of tea, lemon cake, and wood polish. She had dressed in simple jeans and a blue cotton sweater, her brown hair tied back. She was tired, but moved with purpose, her hands always busy offering cups, adjusting chairs, smoothing out crumpled donation flyers. Thomas wanted his legacy to grow something, she said quietly to Jack. So we're launching something in his name. The Reed Fund Respite and Emergency End-of-Life Defense. It'll help veterans with aging pets' food, medical bills, even cremation services. Jack looked at her, eyes clouded with emotion. He would have liked that. I think so too. In the corner, Lily passed out the handmade card she'd drawn. Dandelions floating in watercolor with "To remember Mr. Thomas" scrolled in her careful handwriting. When she got to Jack, she tucked hers into his shirt pocket without a word. That night Jack sat on his porch, legs stiff, arms folded. Rex lay by his feet, the silver tag from Reverend Graham glinting softly in the porch light. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. From the far edge of the field, the wind carried the faint scent of lavender, Thomas's favorite plant. Jack leaned back, looking at the stars, and whispered, "He's still here." "Huh, buddy?" Rex's ears twitched once. He turned his head to the side, looking toward the empty chair across the porch, then laid his head on Jack's boot. It wasn't goodbye. It was gratitude. The River Festival arrived with early autumn's crispness. In the air, a gentle breeze brushing across the town of Cedar Hollow. Colorful banners flapped above Main Street, and laughter echoed from the Riverside Park where families gathered. Food trucks lined the perimeter, and a makeshift stage was set for the afternoon's activities. In the center of it all stood Jack Monroe, now fully reinstated in the sheriff's department, dressed in a pressed navy uniform with a polished badge glinting beneath the sunlight. His presence was quieter than the crowd, but commanding in a way that didn't ask for attention. It simply drew it. By his side, Rex stood tall and composed, wearing his official K9 harness and a red bandana fluttering slightly under his collar. His sable and silver coat had regained its sheen, his eyes alert yet calm. This year, for the first time, the highlight of the festival wasn't a concert or fireworks, it was the K9 demonstration. Jack gave a brief introduction, then clapped his hands twice. At the signal, Rex darted through the crowd with precision, nose low to the ground. Within 3 minutes, he located a small boy hiding behind a vendor tent. Jude, age 5, who had wandered from his mother. The cheers that erupted afterward were louder than any applause the town had given before. Later that day, Jack and Rex were surrounded by a group of excited children as part of the new program called Rex and Friends, an initiative Jack started after seeing how Rex's story had moved the community. The children listened wide-eyed as Jack and a local volunteer demonstrated how to treat a dog's injured paw, what to do if someone with PTSD had a panic episode, and how to understand body language in working dogs. Each child was given a badge-shaped sticker that read, "I'm a friend of Rex." Under a nearby maple tree, a new wooden sign had been mounted with hand-carved letters, "Thomas and Rex's Corner, where promises stay." Jack had placed it there himself just before dawn. He sat for a long while beneath the tree before joining the crowd, his hand resting on the earth as if touching a memory. Meanwhile, Elise Moreno, the town's beloved veterinarian, stood near the Reed Fund tent, a modest booth adorned with photos of elderly veterans and their pets. Elise, ever poised with her practical denim jacket and warm eyes, now served as the fund's coordinator. She spoke gently with a widow who wanted to adopt an older beagle, promising full medical support from the fund. At the back of the tent, Reverend Graham arranged a stack of brochures next to a wooden donation box. Though his hair had grayed more in the past few months, his spirit remained steady. He offered soft blessings to anyone who approached, still moved by how Thomas's final days had become a seed of growth for the entire town. A little further down by the riverbank, Mia Perez was rallying a group of teens in matching yellow vests. They held shovels and saplings, 62 pine trees to be planted along the W's edge, one for each year of Thomas Reed's life. The teens, once known for lighting fireworks in dangerous places, now laughed as they dug, their energy redirected into something lasting. Nearby, Lily skipped between booths, proudly introducing herself as ambassador of books. Clutching her favorite dandelion-patterned journal, she invited children of military families to join her in storytime circles. One boy asked why Rex wore a scarf. Lily whispered, "It's from his old best friend. He still listens to it in the wind." As dusk softened the edges of the festival, Jack and Rex returned home. Their small house, modest and quiet, was tucked near the woods where the first miracle had begun. On the front porch, Jack sat with a cup of tea while Rex curled beside him. The wind stirred again, and the red bandana tied above the door swayed in gentle arcs. Jack leaned down, resting his hand on Rex's back. "You know," he murmured. "He didn't leave, buddy. He just passed the torch. And you? You never stopped leading." Rex's ears flicked at the sound, and though he didn't move, his tail gave a slow, contented thump. Above them, stars began to prick the velvet sky. Quiet witnesses to a town changed not by loud revolutions, but by small, steadfast acts of loyalty, by one man's promise and one dog who kept walking at home. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with trumpets or lightning from the sky. They come quietly in the form of a scarred dog who never gave up, or a man who dared to start again when the world had already written him off. This story reminds us that loyalty doesn't die with loss, it transforms. Through Rex, we see that God's grace often moves through the most unexpected messengers. When we care for others, when we plant hope where there was once pain, we become part of something holy. Thomas's promise lived on because one dog kept walking the path, and through that faithfulness, an entire town was changed. In our daily lives, we might overlook small moments or wounded souls, but perhaps God places them in our way, not as burdens, but as bridges. Bridges back to healing, back to purpose. If this story touched your heart, please share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more true stories of second chances. Write Amen in the comments if you believe loyalty never dies, and that even the quietest among us can carry the light of miracles. May God bless you and your family with peace, strength, and unexpected grace.